hello, you guys. Hello, how are you? How are you? Well, welcome or welcome back to today's lesson 7 in the IT about IT project risk management. What exactly are you going to learn today? Core vocabulary for identifying and communicating project risk. 10 key vocabulary words with phonetics. Grammar, conditional sentences, modal verbs for risk communication. How to write a risk register entry and escalate a risk early. Clearly. Oh my god, early and clearly, right? And as always, you can find this worksheet and much more useful educational content in our Telegram channel and other social media that suit instance. And here's a little QR code that you can scan and you will be redirected to the Telegram channel. And let's go to the core vocabulary. Risk register, a document that lists and tracks all identified project risks. The risk register currently lists 8 open risks. Likelihood, how probable it is that a risk will occur. The likelihood of a delay is rated as medium. Impact, the effect a risk would have if it occurred. If the vendor is late, the impact on the launch date is high. Mitigation, an action taken to reduce the likelihood or impact of a risk. Our mitigation is to order backup hardware 2 weeks early. Contingency, a backup plan to use if a risk actually happens. Our contingency is to extend the deadline by 1 week. Escalate, to raise a risk or issue to a higher level of authority. We escalated the risk to the steering committee. Monitor, to watch a risk closely over time. We monitor this risk weekly at the status meeting. Threshold, the point at which a risk becomes serious enough to act on. The residual, once the delay passes the 2 week threshold, we escalate. Residual, the risk that remains after mitigation has been applied. The residual risk is low after adding a backup supplier. Own, to be responsible for managing a specific risk. The infrastructure lead owns the server capacity risk. A little pro tip, never report a risk without a mitigation or the owner. Okay? A risk with no owner gets ignored. A risk with no mitigation just sounds like a complaint. Grammar, conditional sentences and modal verbs. Today we're going to talk about first conditional and second conditional. In the previous lesson we briefly touched the zero conditional, and in here today we're talking about first and second conditional. First conditional, we use it for likely risks. That is something that most likely is going to happen in the present or in the future. Yep. And how do we create it? Let's look at the sentence 1. If the vendor delivers late, the launch will be delayed by a week. If the vendor delivers late, present tense. The launch will be delayed, future tense. That's all. The part with if, the clause with if, simple, present simple tense, sometimes present continuous. And the second part is future tense, mostly future simple, sometimes future continuous. So if we don't add a backup server, the system may go down under load. Second conditional. We use it to talk about less likely or hypothetical risks in present or in the future. How do we create it? If the exchange rate changed significantly, past tense, mostly past simple, sometimes past continuous, it would affect the budget. So the second part has would, could, might. Yep, it may have would, it may have could, it may have might. What about second? If the key developer left, past tense, we would need 2 weeks to onboard a replacement. Would. Modal verbs for risk severity: could, might, should, must. Could. This could cause a delay of up to 2 weeks. Might. The vendor might not deliver on time. Should. We should monitor this risk weekly. Must. This risk must be escalated before Friday. Key phrases for risk communication. Identifying a risk. There is a risk that if something happens, the impact will. The likelihood is rated as something. Describing mitigation. Our mitigation is 2. We are monitoring this by. The residual risk is. Escalating. This needs to be escalated because the threshold has been reached. This is now owned by. Let's read the model risk update and analyze it. I'd like to walk you through the top risk on our register this week. There is a risk that our main hosting vendor will not deliver the new servers on time. The likelihood is rated as medium, and if it happens, the impact would be significant. The launch could be delayed by up to 2 weeks. Our mitigation is to place a backup order with the second vendor this week. If the primary vendor confirms on time delivery by Friday, we'll cancel the backup order. If they don't confirm, we'll proceed with the backup and absorb the small extra cost. We're monitoring this daily, and we have agreed a threshold. If we haven't received confirmation by Friday, this risk gets escalated to the program director. The residual risk once the backup order is in place is low. This risk is owned by our procurement lead. Let's notice some things. First conditional, used for the likely delay scenario. Modal verbs could be delayed, might not deliver. Clear mitigation, contingencies, threshold, and owner, nothing left vague. And residual risk stated after mitigation, showing the risk is under control. Let's watch out for some common mistakes. If the vendor will be late, we escalate. If the vendor is late, we escalate. That is present simple in the if clause of the first conditional. To be more exact, if the vendor is late, we escalate. That is zero conditional. First conditional is going to be we will escalate. This risk have high impact. This risk has a high impact. We need article and also risk. It is it. So risk has. We must to escalate this. We must escalate this without to. Nobody owns this risk. Nobody owns this risk. The risk is very probably. The risk is very likely. Probably is not a proper word in here. Let's look at this task. Take your time, pause the video. I'm giving you 20 seconds to do that. And then come back and we're going to check your answers, alright? Well, let's discuss. So, if the vendor is late, the launch will slip. Wonderful. Our mitigation is to order a backup server. This risk must be escalated before Friday. The residual risk after mitigation is low. Who owns this risk on the team? Wonderful, wonderful. The next is speaking challenge. Present risk. Choose a real or imagined project risk and present it in 90 seconds. Here is a little structure that you may use and some requirements. Use at least one first conditional sentence, at least two modal verbs, and a clear mitigation and owner. And the question for you for the comments: what is the risk you're currently monitoring at work? Write 2-3 sentences describing the risk, its likelihood, and your mitigation using at least 3 words from today's lesson. Of course, if you are allowed to share such information. If you're not allowed, you can make up a situation, make up a story. Okay? And when it comes to the worksheet with extra tasks to learn this topic, you can go to the Telegram channel and get the worksheet in there. Alright? Thank you so much for coming to this video, and I suppose I hope to see you all next time. Stay safe. Bye bye.